Welcome to a special three-part series on disrupting the entertainment industry and film. And today I have Michael Jelen, CEO of Rewarded TV, with us to share his perspective on what he's building, along with share on the SOS initiative that's happening on March 12th of 2025. And welcome, Michael. It is so great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Kay. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful. Well, let's dive right in. Share a little bit about yourself and then a little bit about Rewarded TV.
Sure. I grew up in Philadelphia and actually took a pretty alternative route to arrive in entertainment. I spent most of my career in traditional financial consulting, actually working on a lot of investigations. So, worked on the Madoff investigation, the Lehman bankruptcy. I moved over to Europe, spent about 10 years there. I was mostly working with large European banks, dealing with US OFAC, Office of Foreign Asset Control, sanction stuff. So, doing data analytics and machine learning in the financial services space. It was awesome. I got to see the world. I got to meet a ton of cool people, but the work itself never really called to me until I was living in the Middle East a couple of years later. I was in Abu Dhabi, and it was 2017. Bitcoin was mooning, and they said, "Hey, get some blockchain involved in this." And I thought for the first time, what is this blockchain thing? What is Bitcoin? How do I dive down this rabbit hole and understand how this is going to affect the world? At that point, technology was super immature. There was really no use case other than Bitcoin for this technology. But I could see here that it had the opportunity to change the way that people interacted with one another, namely, that it allowed peer to peer direct transactions rather than going through any sort of centralized entity that would require trust, whether that's a bank or a government or anyone else. Of course, this is like super early days, so sort of pinned that in the back of my brain and said, all right, I'm sure at some point in the future, blockchain is going to level the playing field and change the world. I'm not sure how. Fast forward to COVID timeframe, and at this point, my wife and I were in the process of getting a place back in the U.S. just to use as an Airbnb property. But as all the flights started to get shut down, we were in Abu Dhabi. Basically, made the decision very rapidly to take all of our stuff, throw it in our car, park it at our friend's house, and just get on a flight back to America. At that point, we moved into our Airbnb place in Austin. Only knew one person there, and the universe just sort of led us to this incredible city with a very, very vibrant Web3 crypto community. So as we started to settle in and meet some people there, I realized that, okay, the technology is maturing. We're starting to get to a point where there are mainstream use cases for it. And that really is what ultimately led to Replay and then Rewarded TV. Replay is the protocol that Rewarded TV is built on top of. And really, at its core, what we're doing is taking a video stream, chopping it up into little 10-second increments and inserting a tracking pixel. So every time that comes through your TV or your phone or your computer, we know that that person viewed that content. And we can put that directly on the blockchain, which makes it publicly accessible and available for everyone to verify that, in fact, this transaction was watched. Rewarded TV is really the streaming platform that everyone can access that enables them to use this protocol. And it doesn't really matter. I mean, from a user's perspective, they should just watch movies they want to watch, sit on their couch and engage. But from behind the scenes, this enables us to reward creators in a fair way, in a transparent way, which really doesn't happen in the industry at all right now. So, like Netflix, for instance, will never share that data. You'll never get that information, and it's really difficult to get paid. So, we see this as the natural evolution. It's the next step of creating a fair, better world that enables collaboration between artists and their audiences, and everyone gets rewarded for the energy that they put into the content that they create.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I love that you brought your work in, like everything you've learned along the way into what you're building now. And looking at Rewarded TV as well, what are you users' experience with it? And like, have you launched it? Like, tell me about like what have users been saying about it so far?
Yeah, we launched in August of 2022, and since that time, we've gotten a little more than 1 million downloads. So there are over 1 million people using the platform. And the users, I sort of would group into two different categories. On one hand, you've got the viewers and their experience with it. So from their perspective, there are about 6,000 different video on demand titles and 150 streaming channels. All of those are, for the most part, free ad supported streaming So you don't have to pay any sort of monthly subscription. You every time you watch something, there are going to be ads, but for you, you're getting watch to earn rewards throughout that. So it's kind of a little bit like earning Netflix shares for watching Netflix. And I think that's a great user experience. It's something we're always trying to work on to expand the content library and get new cool content on there, especially original content. But from the user's perspective, it's been growing very well. And we've got a lot of users in terms of a blockchain project, but still have a long way to go in terms of mainstream adoption for that. The area that I'm super excited about, and I think where we really break the paradigm, is when we work with artists and creatives. In general, the life cycle, for those people who aren't super aware, for a project is typically a team might get together, a director, a writer, maybe an actor, and they'll start to pitch this project to funders. And many of these funders are the large streaming platforms. So it could be Netflix or Amazon or Apple TV. And in these situations, since it's just an idea and money is often the hardest thing to get, a lot of times you'll see a single executive at these firms make a yes or no decision on what content gets to get created. And that decision is almost always driven by money. It's never really driven by what people will enjoy, what will push the envelope and create new art that makes society talk about interesting topics. And it certainly isn't optimized for what people are going to love the most. And so you see this convergence towards sure things or safe bets. That's why there's 50 million Marvel movies, and there's like a lot of saturation in certain things that are guaranteed money makers. But from an artist perspective, it means that you sort of are sacrificing your art in order to make something that is commercially viable or fits a certain mold, and that really leaves a lot desired. If you talk to a lot of these artists and creators, they don't love working with these platforms and they don't love those restrictions. Plus, if that money comes in early from Netflix or Amazon, usually they're going to take a huge percentage, often 80% of the overall capture of the revenue that comes in from that show. And so we sat back and thought, okay, well, if audiences are ultimately the main endpoint of where this content is going, they should be the ones that are happy. And if they're getting something that they enjoy from the creator, why don't we just connect those two parties and let people fund and create the content that they actually want to enjoy and be along for that journey? And that really brought us into crowdfunding. So we started to do a couple experiments in that space. The first one was with the cast of Napoleon Dynamite, and they wanted to take a comic book called Psycho KO and turn it into an animated TV series. And we worked with all the characters were the voices, and Rob Feldman was the creator of this. And the community was just absolutely so excited for this that they opted in. They purchased an NFT, which essentially gave them access to this premium content. They could also engage directly with the cast and with the production team, which was really the coolest part of it all. As we went through that process and it worked out really well, we sat back and thought, okay, well, this is awesome, but like, what's the next step? How do we take this one step further? What if we could take the community and the people who invested in this idea and were along for the ride and actually gave them fractional ownership of the content itself so that, a year from now or 2 years from now, if this ever makes it big or gets mainstream distribution, that they get to have a piece of that pie and everybody who's been involved in this whole process gets rewarded. And when you cut out the huge share that typically goes to traditional streaming platforms, there's actually tons to go around. And so we've started working with Ricky Williams on a project that he's been very passionate about, where he's healing NFL players who have brain trauma using all different kinds of energetic and alternative medicine modalities. So that's a super fun one. I can maybe get into details later, but we've got like eight ex NFL players, 24 healers. It's all being filmed in Austin, Texas, and the community that contributes get to be part of it. They get to interact with everyone along the way. And ultimately, we see this as something that can be sold onward to mainstream distribution. So, in addition to helping a good cause and healing a ton of people, it also has upside. And that whole community end to end vertical integration is really what we're trying to bring to the industry.
Wow, that sounds incredible. There's a lot to unpack here. I'm very excited about this because, you and I've talked in the past and as well as like sharing now, we see this in like the creative industry as a whole is like they're losing out when they're not being paid for their work like they should. There's like a lot of things. So what you're doing is really eliminating that roadblock and giving the power back to the creatives to express themselves, to share their work, to get paid for their work, and also provide new and exciting content to the viewers. So I think what you're doing overall is really cool, and I love how you're disrupting the industry, which I'd like to dive into. A project that you're working on right now is with the SOS initiative. And so can you tell me How is Rewarded TV involved with the initiative, and how are you breaking barriers through this project?
Yeah, perfect transition. So, as we just talked about, getting projects from 0 to 1 and involving the community is certainly one way to do it. But the SOS initiative is taking projects and stories that are already out there or things that people have invested in, they've created, and that the films have come to light. But it is difficult to make sure that people get a living wage for this and they get distribution and people hear these stories and they get out into the world. And that's really what Jennifer at AEB is doing. It's absolutely incredible, and I'm honored to be part of it. When I sat down with Jennifer and we were talking about different ways that we could consider distribution, one of the things that came up was the power of people. And in this situation, when you hear from your friend a recommendation of what film to watch or what movie to watch, that carries so much more weight than simply seeing it in your queue at Netflix of things that you might like, because your friend is able to explain it to you and they can communicate the importance of it and maybe even relevant relevant points that are going to like facilitate you and what causes you care about. And in this situation, that's exactly what is happening with the film Spiral. I personally had a friend of mine take his own life due to bipolar disorder and mental health a few years ago. And through that friend and some mutual friends, she introduced me to Randall. I then, as I talked to Randall, I heard his story. I got to watch the film at the Texas premiere a little while ago. And together, me, Randall, and Jennifer just started brainstorming how do we get the energy of this film and how do we take the energy of the people that it has touched and get that out into the world and spread this message without spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on marketing or tons of money to do the more traditional route, and also not sacrificing the values that everyone has and going directly to some of the large streaming platforms. And what we came up with was essentially what already works in word of mouth or social media style communication, which is referrals. And so in this situation, what we're doing with the Spiral event is on March 12th during South by Southwest at Kingdom in Austin, Texas. We're going to be having a screening, but that screening is actually going to be flanked on either side by discussions with the production team. Randall will obviously be there. I'll be there. We'll be talking about why this is important, what the impact is, and how this benefits mental health. And then the event itself, that screening, all of the money that comes into that is obviously fueling this narrative and the importance of bipolar disorder, the importance of getting help. And so we're in collaboration with NAMI, the National Alliance for Mental Illness, and also some of the healthcare providers that are willing to give free services to anyone who's involved in this event to help intervene if they or a friend or a family member needs help in this situation. And in exchange, we are now offering referral links to anybody who wants to sign up and be part of this movement, this word of mouth movement. And so you can go on, you can register, you can get your referral link, you get a flyer, a QR code, post it on your social media, and just spread the word. And 10% of everything that comes through a referral goes back to that person who generated it. So if you have your own personal charity or any other cause that you want to take that and donate it to, that's perfect and that's amazing. And we believe that this way of engaging everyone and creating shared incentive structures is really quite new and novel, and it allows us to actually reward people for the energy that they put in and the voice that they have to share this. So I see this as a key way that we can unlock and uncover these incredible nuggets, the amazing needle in a haystack story that we as humans want to engage in, the cause that we want to engage in, and get that out into the world in a way that doesn't cost a ton of money and it rewards every single person involved.
Oh, what you're saying is so powerful, and I absolutely love this because you're innovating and you're bridging a gap with this project and utilizing the advancements of technology and blending art and technology together to create something that is rewarding all parties involved, and then also spreading the word about a good cause, something like mental health initiatives, which you touched on. You've had an experience in your life that mental health has affected, and I also have, and I think anybody watching this has probably somebody in their life or themselves went through something around mental health. So how would you inspire people, motivate people to get excited about utilizing technology in new ways to share stories like this to raise awareness for good cause?
Right. I think we're really honestly just scratching the surface. Jennifer has a ton of other films that have great causes that I know that she wants to also try to put through this pipeline of what we can do with referrals. But I think about other situations in my life that affect me personally that I know are also struggling with the same problems. I recently listened to a podcast called The Telepathy Tapes, and it's sort of been making its way around the world lately. I have a brother and sister who have autism, and I've been very involved in the autism communities for my entire life as a result of that. And I've always sort of had this suspicion that these kids had extra gifts and things that we just weren't tapping into. And actually, my mom's charity is focused on uncovering these gifts and helping them integrate directly with society. So rather than just pushing shopping carts in a shopping center, you uncovered that this person is an incredible artist, and we help set up an Etsy store, and we're able to get things out there. But as soon as I went to the Telepathy Tapes podcast website, I saw that they were looking to raise money to make a documentary. And I thought, okay, this is an amazing coincidence, serendipity of the universe that here's another cause that has a purpose and a story behind it. And I would just love to get involved with them and help them through this process as well. And that's just, one thing that's affected me personally. I can't even explain how many causes from environmental to specific stories to diseases that can be addressed in this way. And because it's grassroots and it sort of comes from the community, you can create it and be as flexible as you want. And so, one thing that people have really loved to do is have in real life events or engagement with the production team. They want to do monthly Zoom calls or video calls. They want to have merch. They want to get extra behind the scenes content because when people are passionate, there's really not a huge outlet for them to engage directly with creators. Whereas I could go to the store and buy a refrigerator, and like Samsung might have all of my home information. A director has no idea who actually watches their film, and they have no route to connect with that audience directly. And so, by putting that into a platform that's more focused on the community and putting up these different projects, almost like a Kickstarter style pipeline, we can get people involved and let that energy be allocated towards the things that people love, care about, and want to support. And then let the creator and their audience engage and come up with whatever fun incentives that they want to have for that, including, of course, like potential ownership of the process. So yeah, I don't know. We're at the very beginning here, but I see so many different possibilities and I see lots of different opportunities for collaboration. And that is really the direction we're headed towards.
Oh, definitely. I'm seeing so much potential here and so many, like you said, starting with this project and building. And you've touched on some other initiatives that you are involved with. Can you share a little bit about, I think you mentioned the football healing initiative. I'm very curious about that project. And can you share just a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. This again just touched me personally and was a reason that I wanted to get involved in it. But a friend of mine, Andy Budman, she worked on Hitman. I don't know if you saw that movie with Glenn Powell. It was number one on Netflix last summer,
My favorite
and
movie right now.
it's yes, it's awesome. Glenn Powell's the man, super great. And we were just sitting one afternoon, and Andy was sort of complaining to me. She was like, Netflix like hasn't I haven't heard anything from them. And this conversation went on, and it's now mid-February, and Netflix still hasn't paid her a dollar or given any information at all about this. And they can because they're huge and they don't really care. And that sort of riled up inside of her this need to do something outside or just like break free to this. Like, if I make good content, I've been in this industry for a long enough time. People love what I do. I can go out there and I can make it. I just need to figure out what is the perfect project to do it. And she's friends with Ricky Williams. And through talking to Ricky, there's been this huge passion that he's had for a very long time. So, for those who don't know, his life story, obviously Heisman Award winner at UT, legend in the NFL, and while he was there, he saw all of his other colleagues, other football players, getting essentially drugged up with opiates constantly. And, it's just sort of what the natural thing to do is like power through, push through. And Ricky didn't want to do that. He wanted to take a natural approach. And so he was smoking cannabis. And at that time, cannabis was not legal in the United States. And so this resulted in not being allowed to play in the NFL, a huge uproar, lots of tension and things around that. And Ricky really sat back and thought, like, maybe this is a gift. Where is this giving me? Where is this taking me? What do I do? So moved to India and lived in an ashram, got into energy healing, and started to uncover all these different healing modalities that inspired him to go back to the US after that and take a look at the players who had been surrounding him on the football field and see if there was a way that he could help them. And of course, in football, everyone pretty much has seen how many concussions these guys get. It's a very, very hard on your body sport. And Ricky started working with some of these players. It's incredible the results that he's seen. A lot of these guys could barely button their shirt button at the age of 40, or like raise their arms to put their luggage in their overhead container. But through this, it's sort of given them their lives back. And we sort of forget about players after they leave the field. These are almost modern day gladiators, that are abusing themselves for our entertainment. But they're a dad, they're a husband, they have these other elements of their life. And to be able to give them that back for the remainder of their years is just so incredibly powerful and transformational. And so Ricky, of course, is drawn to this, and he put together a team of healers. There's 24 different healers. We have our lead healer. We're working with a neurosurgeon, and we're going to be demonstrating this through a series of medical tests. So the whole process, the TV show, is 7 days long. At the very beginning, at the very end, we do brain scans, a battery of these inflammation markers and tests for the brain, all different sorts of different things. And then largely leaning on cranial sacral therapy and visceral manipulation throughout this 5 day therapy period. We're doing it in Austin, Texas, at this house, which is super awesome. It's a guitar-shaped swimming pool. It's very, very cool. But all the players will be there. We'll all be mostly unlocking the transformational stories that they're going through and the feelings that they have as all this goes through. I'm very excited to be there as somebody who loves energy and like the power of energy healing. And we're doing it all through crowdfunding. So the people who want to be part of this production get to actually put some cash in. They essentially pre-buy the show itself in advance before it comes out. They also get a bunch of perks like behind the scenes footage, these like monthly video calls with the team. And then as we go through and we make it, they would be the first money out after we're doing a limited release in fall of 2025, right around the beginning of the next NFL season. And so it really eliminates the risk or reduces the risk for those people significantly. But obviously, I think they're doing it because it's an exciting cause and something amazing to be part of. And then, of course, they still maintain ownership in the actual entity as well. And this is like a US SEC regulated Reg CF, so crowdfunding instrument. It's a piece of equity, and we then when we sell this on to mainstream distribution, they would of course receive proceeds from that too. And all this is made possible by the blockchain, right? So we're able to give people these NFTs. It doesn't even really matter if you know what an NFT is or not, but you give people these different digital collectibles and things that unlock the premium content, unlock experiences. People can spend a day on the set, they can come to parties, all that sort of stuff. And actually, on the March 12th event, we'll be closing out that evening with a panel. Ricky will be there. We'll be talking about this and then lead right into a party as well. So, yeah, I'm really excited. I think all these things, in my mind, really come together to shape the future of what film and TV looks like. And the future is collaborative, and the future focuses on the community.
That is so powerful. And it is true. I mean, looking at the multiple projects you're working on and seeing the future of the film industry, it really is at that cusp of we need to transform. We need to change from what we were doing to something new, and that's the beauty of the evolution process of anything. So, looking at this project on the 12th, I how can people get involved with it, and how would you encourage people who are maybe on the fence, with things that are like those big words like blockchain or NFTs where people are a little confused? How would you get them excited about this?
Yeah, I think the most important thing here is that even though the technology itself has a bit of a scary reputation, we've been gone through these cycles of ups and downs. There's like kind of a cowboy style reckless abandon that's associated with it. Everyone knows about meme coins, right? All of this sort of stuff takes the attention and the buzz of the industry. What people need to realize is that this is a foundational technology, just like the internet. When the internet first came out, it got a lot of scrutiny. People didn't really understand what it was for. But now nobody even knows how it works. You just pick up your phone and like the internet is there. You're connected to everything. Every company has a website. It's just like pervasive. And it's this phase of blockchain's growth that breaks it down from being a technology people have to talk about to something that's hidden behind the scenes and just lets you do what you want to do. And that's our goal. That's the number one goal here, is that people don't even need to know that blockchain's involved. You just sit on your couch, turn on your TV, and boom, there's your show, right? But behind the scenes, everybody gets to participate, everybody gets to be involved, they get paid properly, and all that sort of stuff takes care of itself. So yeah, I guess I would say don't be afraid of the technology. That that certainly shouldn't scare you away. But I have actually, we've been putting together what we're calling, a Web3 or W3B TV collective, right? So it's kind of like a Film 3 collective. And this is anybody who's involved in the film and TV industry who's touching on these emerging technologies, whether it be blockchain or AI, is really an outcast in a lot of ways. There's a lot of backlash against AI, and these technologies in general. And so these people who are doing innovative, cool things don't necessarily have a place to share, talk about it, and demonstrate the different future possibilities that they're coming up with. So actually, on that March 12th event, earlier in the day, I think between like 2 and 4 p.m., somewhere around that time frame, we've got a couple people coming in from the industry, including actors, there are different producers, directors, AI people, engineers that are going to be talking about how all of these technologies are really creating and shaping a new future for the industry. And yeah, anybody's welcome to get in touch with us. Our website is rewarded.tv. You can check it out, and feel free to drop me a direct email as well if you have any questions. Michael at rewarded.tv, and happy to route you in the correct direction for that. But yeah, we've got a lot of different areas that you can get involved in. You don't have to be technology savvy at all. You just have to be passionate about the things that we're doing. So yeah, I think it's a super cool, super bright opportunity in that space. And we've actually been playing, I personally have been playing with some AI agents. I've always personally had a problem with getting recommendations. I don't like the Netflix or the Amazon, like, hey, these are the things you should watch next. This is what you should do. And so we thought, okay, well, maybe this is an opportunity for us to build something. So I've started getting into AI avatars, and you can train an avatar, obviously using video of yourself. It's essentially like deep fake technology, right? But one of the things that started off as a detriment, but ultimately became kind of a benefit to us, is that we don't have the same amount of watch data as Netflix or HBO or any of these other platforms. But through one of our blockchain partners, Camp Network, they're focused on monetizing Web2 social data. So right now, if you wanted to make any sort of social company, you're competing with Google or Facebook, who basically have every piece of information about every single person on Earth. And it's a really daunting task to try to compete with them. So what Camp did was they allowed users to connect your Web2 profiles and monetize your data. So you can connect your Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, any of these different platforms, share your watch history, and then that goes into a marketplace where anyone is allowed to use that or tap into it. And so, from our perspective, what that means is I could actually build a movie recommendation engine that looks at the podcasts that you listen to on Spotify, the topics that you follow on X, the people that you follow on Instagram, the shows you watch on YouTube. And I actually get like a richer picture of who you are as a person. And I can give you better recommendations than just Netflix or just HBO would be able to in that situation. Plus, wrap it up in an AI avatar like a friend and have a conversation about it where you can say, like, hey, it's date night. All right. Me, my girlfriend, we're going to sit on the couch. We're going to watch something. I'm thinking psychological thriller, maybe made in the last 5 years. Bonus points if it's in Italy, because I kind of want to go there and I want to check it out. Like you can have these sort of more dynamic conversations the way you would with a friend, which is finally possible with the magic of AI. So, yeah, just a couple things we're kind of scratching the surface of. But I really think we're at the beginning of something amazing here for this industry.
I think so too. And you brought up a couple of terms. I'd like to share with the audience what these terms are. You mentioned Block 3, Web 3, and Web 2. Can you just give a brief on each of those? Like, what are they for those who are very curious?
Yeah, I guess it all kind of goes back to the original definition of the web. And when we think about what the web is, Web 1.0 was basically read, right? Is read access. That's when we started to take information and put it onto websites. So at its most basic, this is, hey, there's a pizza place down the street. I wonder what time it's open until and what the menu looks like. Let me see if they have a website. And you go on the website and you're like, oh, yeah, perfect. Here's a menu and here's like the information. And usually there'd be like a phone number so you could call them, whatever. That was like Web 1.0. And so Web 1 is sort of like wrapped up in that. Web 2, Web 2.0, was really when we started to read and write on the internet. So this is the rise of when people started to create their own content, whether that content was posting pictures on Facebook or posting videos on YouTube, blogs, starting to blog, creating our own content, and having more of a two-way street of reading and writing on the internet. So that was the natural next step of what we were doing. Web3, and the reason why it's sort of anomalous for crypto, is that this is when we got into read, write, own. So it's the first time which digital assets that have some sort of ownership or money or programmable money became possible. And the idea of owning some kind of asset is like a very foreign concept up until this point, but it really makes a lot of sense and it makes it possible for us to do amazing things. So, for instance, in our situation, based on this conversation, you could take an entire movie and you could put that on as a digital asset that is on the blockchain. And then you could have written directly into that smart contract, think of it just as like programmable attributes, who owns what percentage, right? And so I could own 10%, you could own 10%, these people could have 1%, 100%, whatever. And at the point of which this asset generates some revenue, which could be through being streamed, could be through being sold, whatever the case is, I can set up automatic transactions such that that money will flow directly to everybody who deserves it. And this is really a huge unlock. It's not just for film and TV, but for music, for artwork. Artwork in general, think about when people buy a painting. How many times is something sold for like $50 and then, 100 years later it's sold for $50 million? But that person the artist only got that first $50, right? So it doesn't matter that they got more popular or anything like that. What we can do now with blockchain and Web3 is that you could actually program in a royalty fee of like 2.5% or something every single time that that artwork trades hands. So if it goes from like 50 to 100 to 1,000 to 100,000, the artist is actually recovering a cost of that every single time all the way through. And these are just interesting things that we can do. Of course, the sky is the limit here, but the ability to program money and have this ownership of digital assets really starts to change the world. And it allows collaboration is the main thing. Blockchain is really just opening us up to organize humans in a better way with transparent structures that are all facilitated by code. And that's what we're moving to. The Film 3 Collective is a group of people that have been working in the film and TV industry, and specifically working with blockchain as well. And what we're creating right now with the W3B TV collective that we're starting as well is to not just tap into those people, but also anyone who's using AI. You can now start to produce things at a much, much cheaper price. Even if you're the actor who's acting, you can CGI in whatever background, you can change things, you can alter, you can edit. And this is just increasing the number of creators that exist in this world. Additionally, you can also create derivative content. So you could take someone else's work and then make AI modifications or change it or create your own ending. And this sort of stuff is becoming possible for this time. But we also want to make sure the mechanisms are in place to reward the original creator and make sure that everybody who's put some energy into this are getting paid for it. And so that's really the idea and the vision of this is we're super small when it comes to these large mainstream streaming providers, and so banding together and creating a team of people that ultimately wants a fairer, better, more collaborative world is the way that we're able to get the message out and spread all of the cool news about the interesting projects everyone's working on.
Definitely. Well, thank you for sharing a breakdown of that. I can see where you're building, where you're going, and leveraging the power of your own network is a huge part. This has been such a great conversation. Michael, thank you so much. How can people connect with you and the projects you're working on?
Sure. I would say rewarded.tv is probably the first place to go. To learn more about that spiral event in particular, it's rewarded.tv/spiral/event/SXSW for South by Southwest. Feel free to follow me on X. I'm at Michael Jelen. But yeah, other than that, feel free to drop me a direct email if you want to. I dropped my email earlier, Michael at rewarded.tv. But very open, love to collaborate, love to talk to anybody about anything. So please don't hesitate. Looking forward to building a cool collaborative future with everyone.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been such a joy to share information with you and hear how we're disrupting the industry. Thanks for this great conversation.
Thanks, Kay. Talk to you soon.